Thanks so much, crew. And actually, this is a really good transition into the next session, which is going to build on some of the things that was talked about in that panel around some of those kind of dizzying amount of regulations and greenwashing and things that are kind of hard to comprehend all in one place. And so we want to bring up a couple experts in that field within the advertising industry to help put this in perspective of what's important for you all to know and also bring back to your organizations. So with that, please welcome Gemma Butler and Stephen Woodford.
Hello.
Hello. Sorry. Hello, everyone. We are going to talk about, I guess, the other side. So we've been listening about, the media and the emissions and everything. We're going to talk about the bit that no one's talking about, which is, what we go out there and say as marketing and communication professionals. And, it's certainly a space where everything related to environmental claims or green claims, however you want to call them, it's a really important place for marketing and communications professionals to be aware of, the landscape, the regulations, what we say and how we say it, because we play a very significant and powerful role in shaping behaviors, in driving consumption, and we also have a huge opportunity to use our powers for good, as we say, Can Marketing Save the Planet, and grow in new places of opportunity with the good growth, whatever good growth actually means. So, I think from a regulations perspective, how organizations talk in relation to what they're doing around sustainability or their products or green claims is really important. And as professionals, we need to be aware of the regulation. We don't need to be experts in the regulation, but we certainly need to be aware of it. So I think, it's really important to start by saying that the regulation isn't going away. It's here to stay and it's evolving at pace. I think to start with, there's 4 areas very quickly. I'm not an expert in the legal side of things, but I do study this part and work with a lot of organisations around their green claims. But, just 4 highlights. In the UK now, the CMA have direct powers to fine under the Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Bill, so they no longer have to go through a lengthy investigatory process. They do have that power to fine directly, which is green claims do fall under that. So wherever there is a misleading claim, and a green claim can be a misleading claim, they do have the powers now to fine. The ASA have been paying particular attention to green claims made in advertising, and if you go to their rulings page, which is an open page, which I would say everyone on the list, everyone in the room here should go and have a look at their rulings page. You'll see that there is an increasing number of ads that have been banned in the green claim space. The EU Green Claims Directive is currently on hold because of concerns around requirements for SMEs. What does that mean? That means that it's on hold. EU member states all have regulation in place anyway. So the EU Green Claims Directive, which sits under the EU Green Deal, 2026 was the year that the EU member states were supposed to get their ducks in a row and move into the Green Claims Directive. But they all do currently have regulation or guidelines in place under consumer law. So, I guess the advice is if you're operating in or advertising into or selling into the EU, then you still have to abide by the regulations under consumer law. And then finally, Client Earth, still very active in this space, still announcing high-level cases against large corporations for greenwashing. Just one this week, I won't say who it was, but yeah, just one this week. So, my advice there is follow Client Earth on LinkedIn because and go and look at their website because they have a whole host of information.
So we're going to do this as a sort of 2-way Q&A. So I'm going to ask Gemma some questions first, and then Gemma's going to ask me some questions. So Gemma, what kind of sustainability claims do you think should be considered high risk under that guidance that's out there at the moment?
I'd say high-risk claims are absolute claims, like 100% sustainable. Not happening. Nothing in this world is 100% sustainable. Things like 100% recyclable. Whilst your packaging may be fully recyclable, you can never, as organisations or advertising agencies, guarantee that that person is going to recycle that product. This is why we will never recycle our way out of this. There's different infrastructures in the recycling world, that different levels of funding, you know. So I think they are an absolute no-no. I'd also say broad claims. You know, we've seen lots of industries like the airline industry protecting our future, making good for the planet claims. You know, the amount of evidence you would need to try and substantiate that claim, it just doesn't exist out there today. So I would say stay away from broad claims. And also labeling, you know, labeling for products or within advertising, if you take a label and bring that in, is you know, very misleading. I think labeling is probably the biggest catalyst for greenwashing, because you are, you know, you've got a very finite amount of space. You usually make green or put a picture of something nice on there and use the word eco. You know, if we ask, what does eco mean? So I think, you know, stay away from those things as communications professionals, as a broad.
So going from the very broad, because I think I totally agree with you. You know, if you're looking to assess a claim, how do you make sure that you're specific, verifiable, and non-misleading? Because that's the sort of other end of the telescope, isn't it? When you get down to something like a very specific claim.
Well, I say the recommendation from when we interviewed Guy Parker, the CEO, the chief executive of the ASA, was keep your claims targeted and keep them narrow, because you will more than likely be able to substantiate a narrow claim. But I would say, you know, can I prove this? If you've got clients and you're working with clients that want to make specific claims, ask them, can you prove it? Do you have the data, the rock solid data that allows you to verify that claim? And I would also say, you know, the guidelines around the world that I've looked at, the principles are the same across all of them, you know, and absolutely go and have a look at the Green Claims Code. There's 6 questions that you need to ask for the Green Claims Code. They're really, really well set out. And if your answer is, I don't know, or no to any of them, don't make the claim.
And also, I think with the ASA, take advantage of copy advice, because they will give you advice.
And it's free.
And it's free, yeah. What do you think, I mean, you've got extensive experience in looking at marketers and how they're approaching these challenges. What do you think is the thing that they most often overlook when trying to navigate this landscape?
I would say, as in the advertising world, the thing that is most overlooked is this green halo effect. So what you say, you know, bear in mind that what you say, a consumer is likely to look at that and make a binary decision of good product, bad product. So if you highlight in an ad that it's 30% less plastic in the bottle or whatever it comes in, then a consumer is going to go, good product. When actually it's still 100% plastic, it's just 30% less than the previous packaging. So by creating this green halo effect on products, it's not taking into consideration the chemicals that potentially, if it's a cleaning product, are in there, where that product's going to go at the end of its life, the emissions in making that product. So I think, you know, it's just greenwashing, green claims, whatever we want to call them, environmental claims. There's a lot of complexity within there, which is why we have to, within the Green Claims Code, look at the full life cycle of those products.
And striking that balance between accuracy and over-claiming. Yeah. That's almost an art as well as a science, I would think.
Yeah, and I think
how do you think they best do it? How, if you were a brand or an agency? I
think, you know, striking that balance between the two is ensuring that the information that backs up your claim is easily accessible. I think also striking that balance is, you know, if you're doing what you say and saying what you do, and vice versa, then there shouldn't be an issue, should there? And I'm always advocate for go and work with your sustainability team. I think we've passed the point of just marketing and sales having a relationship. We've got to work with our sustainability teams, our legal teams, our operational teams, so that we have that rounded view, because green claims are going to come from either the marketing or an advertising professional seeing something out there that consumers want and saying we need to talk about this, or it's going to come from within the organization that say, you know, the R&D team, when they're developing products, are saying there's a claim we can make here. But I guess my one big piece of advice, which came from Cecilia Parker-Aranya at the CMA when we interviewed her, was don't make a claim just because you can make a claim. Sustainability should be at the heart of why you're making that claim in the first place.
That's such good advice. I also think marketers need to become best friends with the sustainability leaders in their businesses and vice versa.
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. When Michelle and I started Can Marketing Save the Planet, and we'd be building all of our training programs and our educational advice out, we thought we would have hordes of CMOs coming to us going, we need your help. And actually, the heads of ESG, sustainability, chief sustainability officers are our biggest people the biggest group of people coming to us to say, how do we talk about this? How do we break down the jargon? How do we make what we're saying relevant and relatable to, people out in the general public and society, but be truthful at the same time? And I think this isn't about green claims regulation. Isn't about silencing us and for fear of greenwashing and then effectively green hushing, because we love a term, don't we, in marketing and advertising. But I'd say it's about doing responsible marketing, and to the GIF-GAF responsible marketing manifesto. I use that in my classes when we teach at Cambridge and CIM, because I think it's a brilliant piece of work, and I think it's about good responsible marketing, which is strategic marketing, and I think we need to go back to that as opposed to throwing enough mud at the wall and hoping some of it sticks.
And I think we were sitting at the front listening to the previous panel, and I think we were agreeing violently with everything that was said there, but I thought Andy made the point a couple of times about this is also good for business. This is not an either or. I think that's such an incredibly important point that we need to keep on reminding people. This is not a trade-off. This is about better business.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I always say it as well, you don't just do good or make money, because, the view of we just make money and we need to make as much money as we can. Look where we are with our planet and as humanity, right? So you make that choice, then we're on a hiding to nowhere. But also, I would say that those organisations who are doing both are doing it really, really well. So now's my turn to interview you, Stephen. And I would say that, if we talk more broadly about what's happening, so moving outside of the regulation, I think it's fair to say that politically, we have seen a bit of a U-turn with organisations since someone came into power in February. And certainly Michelle and I have seen a lot of organisations pull back from talking. So that external messaging has absolutely been pulled back. And when we had Cecilia on the podcast, she was saying that there are some sectors that are just not talking about it at all. They're almost going through a period of readjustment, either because they want to make sure they have the evidence to substantiate what they're talking about, or they want the right processes and systems in place to be able to support that. Is that what you're seeing as well from your position?
Well, I do think there's probably a cycle of progress that every movement goes through and every transition goes through. And I think we're now in the phase of doing, not talking, which I think is really interesting. And one of the things I take a lot of heart from and I'm very optimistic about is when you look at large-scale data. So PwC published about a month ago something called the State of Decarbonisation, their second ever report, so first one last year. And they survey around about 6,000 large corporations, and they particularly zero in on 4,000 that have made serious climate commitments. And they found that 37% of those firms have increased their commitments, and 16% had reduced them. And that's an amazing stat. These are the world's biggest companies that they're looking at here. So when you look at what's happening underneath, if you like, all the political rhetoric and the sort of easy sound bites of this thing, is that businesses are getting on with it because they know long term, if they're going to be viable businesses, they're going to have solutions. And they're getting shareholder pressure. Shareholders take a long view. They look way beyond political cycles, and they look at the threats to business. They look at business resilience. They look at supply chains. And they also look at the upside in terms of some of the things that the previous panel was talking about and earlier panels. This is better for business. These are not not mutually exclusive. So I think the pressure from shareholders, the pressure from regulation that we talked about, the legislation that's coming, even if some of that is slowing down, it's coming still. So. Yeah. And then ultimately, I think consumer pressure, and then I think something that often maybe doesn't get the airtime that it should, is that people want to work for companies that they think are in the right place and doing the right thing. And if you feel your company is, either rowed back very publicly or it hasn't got the level of commitments, then you might look up elsewhere for where you want to work. So I do think there's those four forces that are driving us into a new stage, but I do think it's absolutely around doing rather than just saying. So people made lots of announcements and there was lots of positive narrative, and I think we're now in the hard work in our industry. Like probably a lot of the industries that our industry serves were probably in 5-10 years ago in terms of the hard, granular stuff on supply chains.
Yeah, and we're seeing, obviously organisations want to remain competitive, and they've invested hundreds of millions in sustainable supply chains and renewable energy and all of those things. I think one of the issues with not talking about it is if we don't talk about what we're doing as organisations, and if we don't talk about how our products and services can help with sustainability and a more sustainable future, is by not saying anything, we are slowing progress within society, the ability for people to make informed choices, to shape behaviours which, they say a third of climate action will come from what we eat, how we use energy, and how we travel. And I think so we do need organisations too, and advertisers and communication specialists to get that awareness out there to drive that forward. Do you think there is an opportunity for the advertising industry to support and indeed more broadly help with that narrative around sustainability and how we talk things? Because I think we don't even have to use the S word when we talk about it. Our roles as marketing and communications professionals are to make our messages relevant and relatable to our audience, and that means we don't have to use the jargon or the sustainability sort of drown them in it because they don't understand it, and nobody cares about carbon because they can't see it.
Well, I think there's lots of opportunity. I think at one level I'd look at when you look at the markets that are going through the biggest transition. So if you look at the car market, obviously that's going through. I know the deadlines move around about when we've got to go fully electric in terms of the car market. But if you look at the ad spend, around 60 to 70% of the ad spend is on EVs, and it's around about 20% of the sales. So those car brands are investing ahead. They're investing where the market's going to be. And I think that's a really good indication, I think, of the sort of driving the consumer ahead of the transition. There's something else that we're doing with Kantar, which we published about a month ago. Kantar test ads all around the world through their pre-testing methodology, and we've now got about 4,500 that they've been looking at. And they've been looking at sustainability cues in these adverts. Whether it's an ad about sustainability or not, are there things in there that give clues or give reference to sustainable lifestyles? And the interesting thing is we've got a benchmark now. So around about 6% of the ads they test globally have some sort of sustainability cue in it. Either they have an overt sustainability message, or it's just the way that there's windmills in the background, or the sort of food that they're portraying, or the sort of transport that they're portraying. So there can be subtle things, they can be background things, or they can be foreground things. But if you look at the car market, around about 30% of the ads globally in the car market are talking about sustainability. So we're seeing differences across categories, and that data that Kantar's got published. Hopefully we're going to see that grow over time. Another reference from Andy, you mentioned the shortlist for the AdNet Zero Awards. We're in the third year of the AdNet Zero Awards. We were really worried this year, thinking the entry level would go down. It's 30% up. So I think that's a really interesting indication about what people in the industry are doing, and the breadth of entries, and we've got a lot more international entries. It was dominated by the UK before. We had 3 judging sessions around the world, one in the UK, one in America, one in EMEA. So we're judging these all around the world now. So that does show that this is spreading. And of course, why do people enter awards? Because they obviously want the recognition for what they're doing. But the brilliant thing about awards is that they show people best practice. Manning Gottlieb OMD and GIFGAF have won awards. No stranger to the AdNet Zero Awards, but many other brands are winning those awards, and they're sort of showing the way forward, I think.
And that's great. I mean, I think we have a huge opportunity to socially norm sustainability so that it becomes part of our daily life, and it's not seen as a telling you not to do something. And I think we need to take that forward. What frameworks are there to support agencies in play around?
Well, we've mentioned it, and I should brilliantly have got the clicker before. I've got a couple of slides. Thank you. Thanks, Frank. So it's those 4 letters have been mentioned a few times today. GMSF. It feels like sort of slightly
practiced
YMCA-ish
it,
in a sense. But so anybody who doesn't know what the GMSF is, the Global Media Sustainability Framework, you can download it there from the QR code. This, I think, is the most significant collaboration that's going on in the advertising and media marketing industry when it comes to sustainability. We set out 2 years ago to build a global standard for measuring media emissions. So across markets, across media, across formats, one set of standards to do that. And that was in response to the industry, particularly brands, saying we've got a whole plethora of calculators and different ways of measuring. And sometimes you get a 5 times difference in the numbers that you get back. So huge demand for a standard way of approaching this. And that framework has got unbelievably good industry support. Now, this chart, I won't go through the detail of this, but there are basically 5 stages that we're going through. We focused on digital to start with, because obviously it's by far the biggest share of media. So that is completed. And we're completing out the rest of the channels. These will all be done. Every single channel will be finished by Q1 next year. And we're right in the middle of working with the outdoor industry at the moment. But across there, you can see a whole load of initials that so you may or may not be familiar with. But these are the international trade associations for the different media categories. And we are working really closely with them to deliver these things. We've got hundreds and hundreds of businesses from around the world engaged in this. So those trade associations and their huge memberships are all working on this. So this is crowdsourced in an extraordinarily effective way. And one of the amazing things that we've come across is no objections. We haven't had a single significant firm or business or brand or trade association not want to do this, which I think is a hugely important step forward. And that's an indication of the people we're working with. We're working on the out-of-home data guidance at the moment, and that's some of the companies that are involved with that and some of the nations that are involved with that. So we've got an incredible coalition working towards this. And the final thing I would say, and it was announced today, I'm not sure whether it's had much media coverage yet, but the IPA Media Futures Group, which many of the media agency folk in the room today, their companies will be members of. I think there's a total of 35 media agencies in that group, have announced today that they are going to be building an industry calculator based on the GMSF, which I think is a fantastic step forward, because it means that whatever size business you are, whether you're a small publisher, large publisher, ad tech, agency, ultimately you'll be able to have access to a calculator that everybody can see. And of course, by having one common base and measure of calculation with common boundaries, if you haven't got the data, there are industry-approved standards that you can put in there, so that even the smallest company doesn't need to be disadvantaged from this, can compete. But it will focus the effort where it needs to be, which is on competing and getting the medium down, driving the best business results from that. So this is a huge step forward.
Hot off the press.
Hot off the press.
I think we can probably finish on that drop the mic moment, can't we?
Moment.
But I guess from my perspective, the last thing I will say is one piece of advice I would give everyone is we did a greenwashing mini-series on our podcast with the ASA, the CMA, and Client Earth. Go and listen to those 3 podcasts. They give some absolutely invaluable advice to everybody in the marketing and communication space.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
I'll take it.